This interview is for information only and should not be considered as investment advice or a recommendation to buy shares in the company featured. Welcome to this Stock Box interview.
Joining us today is Davinder Rai, the CEO of Hellenic Dynamics. Thank you very much for joining us today, Davinder. How are you doing?
Very well indeed. Thank you, Mark. Thank you for having me.
Well, it's good to be speaking to you. Of course, it is the first time that we're speaking, and I wonder if you can perhaps just start us off by giving us a short, high-level overview, the elevator pitch, if you like, for the company and what you're all about.
Of course. Hellenic Dynamics is a UK-listed medical cannabis cultivator, primarily involved in the cultivation and distribution of THC-dominant strains of medical cannabis. We gained a listing as the first medical cannabis cultivator to do so on the main market of December of last year. We operate from a 200,000 square metre ex-United Nations military facility in northern Greece, with a THC cultivation license of 40,000 square meters.
Excellent. So you mentioned there that you were the first cannabis cultivator to list on the London Stock Exchange. What differentiates the company and what you do from other listed businesses in terms of both regulatory and, of course, within the European Union market?
Of course. Well, when we first started Hellenic Dynamics, it was always an ambition to take the company public. We looked at a number of markets. We looked at Nasdaq First North, we looked at Germany. At the time, AIM was not quite as open to having cannabis companies listing. Through our brokers and our legal counsel, we looked at the Cannabo listing on the main market, which was then followed by OCT and TBX. So we realized that the LSE was way more open than other exchanges at the time for cannabis companies. We also felt that the LSE would eventually become a hub for European cannabis companies to list, which it seems is proving correct. And I think what differentiates us from other companies on that LSE is that THC license. So we are a real cultivator of a medicine, a THC medicine, which is highly regulated, both in its cultivation, distribution, and prescriptions within Europe.
Okay. Well, of course, the THC, that is the cannabinoid within the cannabis that has the health properties, isn't it, for cancer, but lots of other medical applications as well. Can I ask you, what was the original idea, if you like, or the original MO of the company as you listed? Did you plan to go down a specific route? I understand, of course, you've got this POD model, its concept, and your recent MOU signed with the German company, it's Demecan, isn't it? The company that you recently got involved with, and you talk about this concept. So, what was the original MO, and perhaps how was that developed? And if you can explain a little bit about this POD model.
Of course, I take it as a positive, although it was not so much at the time, but our listing process with the FCA and the LSE took over 18 months. So the original plan for the company was to do what our related companies were doing within the cultivation space, of growing under glass houses, producing vast quantities of medical cannabis with THC dominance, and then supplying them into markets within Europe. Those 18 months, although it wasn't at the time, it was a huge blessing for us. So we saw that evolution of what I call Cannabis 1.0. We saw cultivators that were cultivating in glass houses. And in real terms, yes, it made sense at the time, but today, with the cost of, with the energy crisis, the cost of power and inflation, those glass houses cost far too much money to heat up in the winter, too much to cool down in the summer. The vast size of these glass houses, you need way more staff to work in those, and wage rates are going up. So that was one thing that we pivoted as we were going through the process with the FCA, that we did not want to grow under glass. A lot of the questions that were coming to us from our customers and prospective customers, well, are you going to be cultivating completely indoors? Because the genetic potential of the plant doesn't reach that precipice within glass houses. The other advantage that we found by going completely indoors is that with a completely controlled environment, you can get up to 6 harvests per year. And so, although indoor cultivation is the gold standard of cannabis cultivation, it's very few places that you can do it cost effectively. Because you're no natural light, you're using LEDs, the environment is completely controlled on a day-to-day basis. Low cost of power was one that it was a prerequisite. So within Greece, we have one of the lowest costs of electricity in Europe at the moment, with a view and some very advanced discussions to actually move over to fully sustainable energy by the way of solar, bringing that cost down even further. The company itself benefits from a skilled and semi-skilled labor force in northern Greece with very, very competitive costs of labor per day. So you bundle in the electricity and the labor, we have the ability to go indoors. So that's something that changed throughout the process. As things progressed even further post-listing, we have the ability, we're a strong, experienced team, that we listen to the market, we listened to our customers, we listened to the patients. And the cannabis cultivation strategy for cultivators, we felt, was that a cultivator would go and choose some genetics that it felt it could grow. It would then grow those and then try and find a buyer for them. We took the route slightly differently by way of this pod concept. So pod stands for product, outsourcing, and development. So we actually went to our distributors and said, you have genetics that you use, you have genetics and end products that your customers are buying. You're limited to where you can actually source those products from. So why don't we, as Hellenic Dynamics, because the size is, the facility is vast and our license is vast, that why don't we build a pod for you? So a pod is a 1,000 square meter fully turnkey cultivation facility. You bring in your genetics that you're struggling to source on the open market. We'll cultivate those for you within the confines of your own cultivation space. And then you are the natural off-taker of those. So the pods themselves occupy 1,000 square meters, capable of producing about 1.2 tons of medical cannabis per annum. And each pod contract is for a minimum of 2 years with an option for a further 2. This ties in with the advanced discussions we have with the financial institution for the CapEx financing of these individual pods. So the idea is after the first 2 years, we amortize the CapEx costs over 2 years, and we have a fully paid for cultivation facility that we have even further advantages with regards to revenues for the following years. The O in outsourcing is us outsourcing, and D development is all the bits that we have the ability to bolt on for our distributors. So we have signed an agreement with Demecan, which is the Greek seed and genetics bank, to IP protect specific strains of cannabis that we're growing for our customers so they have them on.
Okay, so this is almost custom strains specified to what the customer wants. Are you involved in the development of the strain, or do they provide you a specification and you then aim to effectively produce that for them?
It's a strange one. So we have a genetics bank partner that we can utilize for strains for our customers if they don't have their own. What I'm finding increasingly in Europe at least, distributors have some form of agreement with a genetic supplier for genetics that they fit the specific territory that they're in. So those genetics banks of the distributors that they have, it's a case of them cherry picking their own genetics and bringing them to us to cultivate. So in this scenario, those pods are completely bespoke. So the prefabricated building, that's pretty standard. But when it comes to lights, HVAC, irrigation systems, we have the ability to hone those specific pods in line with the genetics that are coming in.
Okay. Now, I understand the first harvest is coming off, well, fairly soon, within the next few months. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct. So we're growing from clones rather than from seeds. We've taken a lot of legal opinions on how those clones can be cultivated for first sales, and we're very comfortable, and so are our customers on that. So we're not growing from seeds, we're growing from clones, which have a 6 to 10 week growth cycle. And yeah, first harvest is going in Q2 of our fiscal year, so anytime between now and September.
Okay, and this first harvest, that you have a customer for that to offtake that immediately, do you?
Yeah, so as we entered the IPO and as per our prospectus, we've got 3 term sheets signed for offtake, and that first harvest and everything that comes out of those bunkers until they turn into a pod themselves will fulfill those term sheets.
I see. Okay, so the market can expect to see some news on the actual cultivation of that product and the sale of that, and of course the numbers to go with that as well. Going forward, would you be almost exclusively pursuing this pod model, do you think?
I believe it's the future of medical cannabis cultivation. I believe growing a product that is already pre-sold is the future. And in this model that we're in, it's actually bringing all of the various elements of the cannabis value chain. We're bringing them together without biting off more than we can chew within those concepts.
Okay. I wonder if you can explain just a little bit more about the financials, perhaps, of the pod model. Did you say there that they would sign up for, was it sort of 2 years, it's 1,000 square foot space they would get? How does it work in terms of the contract that you agree with the off-taker? And can you talk to any numbers at the moment or not?
I can't talk about any numbers just yet, but I will be in a position to do so not too soon from now. We've got our year-end accounts coming out at some point next week. However, they deal with the vast majority of the process of the reverse acquisition as opposed to Hellenic. But what we've been doing with the drafting of those pod agreements is working with our prospective financial partner on those. So the financial partner looks at each pod as a separate business unit. We provide all of the details of the cost of the equipment, the buildings, etc. The financial institution then makes certain changes to each agreement as it sees fit to fit within the lending model that we are hoping to secure. Then those contracts then go off to be agreed. But the amortization of the capex, we've limited to 2 years. So we do a 2-year fixed cost. So we know after 2 years, the capex is paid off and we've got a full 1,000 square meter turnkey solution that just requires OpEx to operate.
I see. Okay, so you develop the pod model with an off-taker. You then go through the financing of that and look to sort of cover that within the 2 years. So you've got your fixed cost there, and then we'll hopefully continue on from there and continue with the revenue. Is that right?
That's correct. Yeah. So we feel after the 2 years that the operational costs are paid off, the revenue margins thereafter.
Well, I know you can't talk about numbers or potential forecasts, but are you able to let us know the potential discussions or the number of discussions that you've got going on with potential off-takers at the moment?
It's my ambition to secure 4 of these contracts for the company in the foreseeable future. I think 4 contracts gives us well over 4 tons of cannabis per annum, which makes us a significant player. The advantage being we're not growing 4 tons of cannabis to then go off and find somebody to buy it. It's pre-sold from the date that those agreements are signed. Just to add on to the pod concept, although each pod is 1,000 square meters, our initial cultivation is taking place in one of our 5 overground bunkers from the ex-UN facility. Those bunkers occupy spaces of around 300 to 400 square meters each. And it is our idea that those bunkers eventually become a pod for a customer or a distributor in a territory within Europe that has smaller patient numbers.
Okay, I see. That's very clear. Can you talk a little bit about the MOU you signed with Demecan? What's that all about? Yeah,
so this was the first part of the concept. I call it a concept. It's not really a concept anymore. It's happening. But the idea with that MOU was we set our stake in the ground and said it's contract white label cultivation under GACP conditions. So we can only sell to GMP-certified distributors in Europe. We have been working with a number of companies, not just Demecan, on defining the details of each of these pods, again, in partnership with our prospective financial institution, to then take those onto agreements and to start cultivating those products as soon as possible.
Okay, well, thank you for that. I wonder if I can finish up by perhaps getting a bit of an idea of the roadmap. You've said your ambition is to secure 4 of these pod contracts. You didn't specify a time, but if you were to lay out perhaps the roadmap maybe for, let's just say the rest of this year, you know, we're halfway through this year. So if we're looking towards the end of this year, what would do you have, I presume you have planned, you have certain objectives or things you want to achieve before year end. Are you able to talk a bit about the plans coming up and what you hope to have achieved by the end of the year?
Of course. From a personal perspective, speaking on behalf of the company, we don't want to go too big. I've seen this time and time again in the space, and again, harking back to that 18-month period with the LSE, I've seen companies that have tried to grow too much cannabis and suffer the consequences of going down that route. So our ambitions within Hellenic Dynamics is to grow with the market. Now, a lot of people think that the market is vast. It's not yet. Excuse the pun, but you know, it's just the early shoots of what could be. And I think that if we play the game correctly and we grow in line with market demands, we'll never be in a position that we're overstretched either on CapEx or OpEx. And I think 4 pods is a great ambition and a great goal for us to secure within the. Okay, my personal ambition is to secure 4 by the end of the year.
Right, your personal ambition is to secure 4 by the end of the year. Okay, and pursuing that sort of growing with the market rather than going too hard at it, and presumably looking to maximise and cost efficiency effectively along that growth path effectively. That's
correct. 4 makes us a significant player in Europe. However, with regards to the company, anything between 1 and 4 makes us a hugely successful company, whatever happens. But yeah, my ambition is to secure 4.
Secure 4. Okay. Well, thank you very much for joining us today, Davinder Rai, the CEO of Hellenic Dynamics. Thank you very much for giving us that introduction to the company, and hopefully we can catch up again further or later on in the year and see how those contracts are coming on. But thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you, Mark. Cheers.
If you enjoyed this interview, then give us a thumbs up, a like or a retweet. Subscribe to us on YouTube or follow us on Twitter and hit that notification bell to be the first to know when we release new content. There's loads of great content on our website too, across all our programs at stockboxmedia.com. Thank you for watching.